again, when I was reading the book about the dialectical process and how important it is to us, that's an assumption that maybe sometimes we need to reevaluate for our students, because forcing the dialectic on them, it's our value, it's not their value. And making them abide by disciplinary standards from the get-go is perhaps not productive to encouraging them to think deeply and intellectually. So
for me, I love writing because of the discoveries that I make. Because I kind of think I have this good idea, but when I go to write it, I find out that it was a little shakier than I thought, and then I have to figure it out. And in this abstract, potentially amorphous universe that I work in, it's as close as I get to making something tangible.
I find that I dislike the idea of writing, and I like writing itself. Like, the idea of writing is like a scary thing to me. I'm like, because I think I see too much of the big picture. I'm like, does my part A actually relate to part C? Is the whole thing crap? And then when I submit it, is it going to get rejected? And you worry about all this stuff. And then if I actually force myself to sit down and start doing it, all of a sudden I get a very ground level perspective, and I get very focused on the immediate thing.
Because you said hopefully it'll turn into something that we can publish. That's the problem with writing for me. I love writing. Yeah. I really enjoyed that little exercise last night because, you know, I was kind of going through, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know I was thinking this. You know, like, that's fun. But worrying about all of that crap with, like, will I get rejected? Is this too obvious? Is it not obvious enough? Who's going to find this contentious? Have I backed it up with 5 sources? You know, that's just crap. And I feel so weighed down by that. That's what teaches me to hate writing. It's all this kind of professional pressure of, really, that's not what writing, I think, is ideally, and it's certainly not critical thinking through writing. That's just writing so that we get tenure, or writing so that we get a promotion, or writing so that we get money. Right. And I mean, of course, I'm taking the
not a lot of
I've
money.
got to do that. Right. Yeah. Hundreds of dollars every year.
you know, this is my 2nd year teaching, and already I feel like our discipline isn't useful for them, like in the ways that we think of it. Right? Like, it just isn't. And I don't want to teach them to be historians. I want to teach them to be human beings that think actively and engage with the world. That's all that I want. And so I've been trying to figure out how do we transfer the tools that are really excellent of our discipline without making them accept that our discipline is even valuable.
Absolutely.
Because it may not be for them, right?
I mean, to write well, you have to write awful lots of complete crap that lead to horrible moments of self-loathing, and to me that you can't detach that from, you know, I get an actual sort of writing high when something comes together, but it only comes together after complete and utter misery and torture.
It's the transferring the tools without the boundaries of the profession, right? Like, I'm trying to make a distinction between disciplining students to accept that there are some kind of professional boundaries that we have to make them operate within, right? And so there are certain tools that historians have that are extremely valuable for enhancing their general intellectual profundity and humanism, but not all of them advance that cause in history. They just don't. Like, a lot of them are just teaching us to be formulaic.
If you can convince students that these various, say, components of a history paper aren't completely arbitrary, then, you know, if I'm teaching them how to do footnotes in Chicago style, and they'll say, well, okay, why does the semicolon have to be there? I'll say, well, it's arbitrary, and it's an arbitrary professional convention. That's just what we do.
I mean, for me, that's always been kind of a question, both in teaching writing and in my own writing. To what extent do I want to play with genres or disciplines a little bit? To what extent do I want that kind of packaging? Or and it's funny, even within the narrow discipline, not even of history, but of East Asian history or Japanese history, I can get very different responses from different readers, and they'll both claim this disciplinary kind of legitimation, right? And say, oh, you can't have that kind of packaging, and then if I change it, they'll say, oh, you need some kind of packaging. It's the same damn discipline. So I kind of wonder, does anybody here play with that? Would you encourage students to say, I'm not really concerned with disciplinary specificity as long as it's well written and it engages me? If you, for instance, Aaron, got a paper that was a detective novel, but it was such a damn good detective novel and so well put together, you'd say, you know, usually I don't like this, but I was never expecting it.
Yeah, I think if there was a good justification was provided for why, right, this kind of format was necessary, why it couldn't. I mean, because honestly, I think the reason that I don't want it to be a detective novel, right, is simply to cognitively, I'm used to seeing information presented a certain way, and it's just again selfish matter of simplification for me.